When I first became a product manager, I felt like I had finally arrived. After years of clawing my way through roles that felt like stepping stones, marketing analyst, UX coordinator, junior strategist, I was finally handed the keys to a product. My product. A B2B SaaS tool that helped mid-size companies manage procurement workflows. Not exactly sexy, but it was mine to shape. I remember the first day like a coming-of-age movie. The shiny MacBook, the flurry of Slack welcomes, the intro deck with headshots of teammates I would barely see in person. My onboarding buddy sent me a GIF of a cat typing at a desk. "You're one of us now." I was full of purpose. I had read Inspired by Marty Kagan, bookmarked The Lean Startup, and could recite the difference between discovery and delivery like gospel. I even made a vision board in Notion for the kind of PM I wanted to be. Collaborative, strategic, data-driven, user-first. I told my mom I'd finally made it.
"So you're the boss now?"
I chuckled. Kind of. What I didn't say, because I didn't yet know, was that being a product manager doesn't make you the boss of anything. You have influence without authority, which basically means you're held accountable for everything but control next to nothing. Still, back then, I wore my title like armor. I was ready to write PRDs, run stand-ups, interface with stakeholders, analyze dashboards, talk to customers, and roadmap like my life depended on it. I was finally at the center of the action, and it felt exhilarating. But the shine started to fade faster than I expected. My onboarding buddy sent me a GIF of a cat typing at a desk. "You're one of us now." I was full of purpose. I had read Inspired by Marty Kagan, bookmarked The Lean Startup, and could recite the difference between discovery and delivery like gospel. I even made a vision board in Notion for the kind of PM I wanted to be. Collaborative, strategic, data-driven, user-first. I told my mom I'd finally made it.
"So you're the boss now?"
I chuckled. Kind of. What I didn't say, because I didn't yet know, was that being a product manager doesn't make you the boss of anything. You have influence without authority, which basically means you're held accountable for everything but control next to nothing. Still, back then I wore my title like armor. I was ready to write PRDs, run stand-ups, interface with stakeholders, analyze dashboards, talk to customers, and roadmap like my life depended on it. I was finally at the center of the action, and it felt exhilarating. But the shine started to fade faster than I expected. At first, it was subtle. I noticed how sprint planning meetings slowly devolved into arguments over velocity points and who could take on what. Engineers seemed agreeable during the meeting, but often forgot what was discussed by the time tickets landed in Jira. "We can build that," they'd say, followed by a long pause. But design started slipping mock-ups to me late or incomplete. "We're exploring a few directions," they'd say vaguely, while I silently panicked about our upcoming milestone presentation. I'd ping them gently, trying to be collaborative, but the tension was palpable. Like I was pushing them toward deadlines they didn't believe in. Then came the conflicting priorities. Sales wanted one feature because a big customer is asking for it, but it wasn't aligned with our roadmap. Customer support had a backlog of 400-plus tickets, demanding fixes and quality-of-life improvements. Leadership, meanwhile, dropped hints that we needed more AI, without specifying what that meant, just that we needed it to stay competitive. I became a therapist, translator, and human shield. On a good day, I kept all the pieces moving in semi-coordinated chaos. On a bad day, I felt like I was juggling knives on a tightrope while being yelled at by someone in finance about missed projections. I started waking up with headaches, checking Slack before brushing my teeth, wondering if I'd forgotten something critical overnight. And yet, I couldn't complain. Because if I wasn't the one holding it together, who would be? The breaking point came during what I now refer to as the roadmap incident. We were preparing for the quarterly planning review with the CPO and senior leadership. I had spent weeks compiling input from stakeholders, validating features with users, and wrangling timelines from engineering. I created a clean, beautiful Notion doc, color-coded by priority, tied to objectives, linked to feedback. The roadmap was tight but ambitious. I was proud of it. I even rehearsed my presentation the night before like I was preparing for a TED Talk. I believed in what I was showing. I believed in the process we followed. I believed this was the right path forward. 10 minutes into the meeting, everything fell apart. The CTO interrupted me mid-slide to ask why Project Nebula wasn't on the roadmap. I blinked. What's Project Nebula? He looked stunned. It's the AI initiative we discussed with the board. No one had looped me in. The VP of sales jumped in. We also need that Shopify integration moved up. It's a deal breaker for 2 enterprise clients. The head of design added, and don't forget the new onboarding flow. That has to launch before Q2. I watched my roadmap unravel in real time. The features I had prioritized, based on dozens of user interviews, NPS feedback, behavioral analytics, and cross-team alignment, were dismissed in minutes. I tried to recover, offering trade-offs, asking clarifying questions, and reminding them of our existing commitments. But the message was clear. The roadmap was wrong, and I was the one who got it wrong. The meeting ended in a blur. I mumbled something about revising the doc and sending a new version by EOD. My manager gave me a sympathetic look but said nothing. That afternoon, I sat at my desk, numb. My carefully balanced world had cracked open. I had followed all the rules, I had done all the right things, and it didn't matter. Later that night, I sat in my kitchen with a beer, scrolling through LinkedIn job posts I wasn't going to apply to. My inbox was full. Slack was buzzing. Jira tickets were stacking up. I had never felt more alone or invisible. That's when I realized no one really knows what a product manager does. If things go well, you're not the hero. The engineers built it, design made it pretty, sales sold it. If things go wrong, that's on you. You are simultaneously over-empowered and powerless. You make decisions with incomplete information and are blamed for the ones that fail. You're expected to be strategic, but also attend every grooming session. You are the glue, and no one notices glue until it starts to crack. In the weeks after the roadmap incident, I spiraled. My confidence was shot. I second-guessed every decision. I stopped speaking up in meetings unless I had airtight reasoning and a backup slide. I started prepping hours in advance for 15-minute syncs just to avoid looking unprepared. One day, the director of product asked me why my velocity numbers were slipping. I almost laughed. Because I was tired? Because I was slowly burning out while pretending I wasn't? Because every meeting felt like walking into a crossfire with a paper shield? But instead, I just said, I'll get them back up. I watched my peers, some who had MBAs, others from big tech pedigrees, float through the role with what seemed like effortless grace. Meanwhile, I was drowning in competing priorities, low morale, and the invisible weight of being the one who's supposed to have a plan when no one else does. I started having stress dreams, literal nightmares about backlogs, last-minute feature requests, stakeholders asking me why something wasn't live yet. I started working late just to keep up with documentation no one read. The worst part? You can't even talk about it. There's this unspoken expectation that PMs are supposed to be composed, thoughtful, endlessly patient. We facilitate, we align, we absorb stress so others don't have to. So I stayed quiet. I nodded. I smiled in retros, said, "Great work, everyone," and then cried in my car during lunch breaks. No one tells you that being a product manager often means having no real allies. You're not an engineer, not a designer, not in sales or marketing. You're always adjacent, always accountable, always alone. But somewhere in that silence, something changed. I started talking to other PMs, not in those polished webinars or medium essays where everyone's shipping unicorns and living the agile dream, but in private, one-on-one calls, DMs, walks with friends who also wore the PM badge. We started telling the truth, that we were tired, that we didn't know what AI strategy meant either, that alignment felt like a Sisyphean task, that we constantly wondered if we were failing or just stuck in a broken system. And weirdly, it helped. I also started questioning the rules I'd been blindly following. Why was I trying to make every stakeholder happy? Why was I writing specs for things I knew would be cut? Why was I pretending to own outcomes I had no power to execute? I pulled back. I simplified. I started saying no, gently but firmly. I refused to turn every opinion into a Jira ticket. I created space for engineering and design to push back. I stopped measuring my worth by the roadmap slide count. I also learned how to listen better, not just to users, but to myself. What energized me? What drained me? What kind of product work actually felt meaningful? I started mentoring a junior PM. I spoke honestly with my manager about my burnout. I began to establish boundaries that I hadn't known were even allowed in this role. I stopped trying to be the perfect PM and just aimed to be an honest one. I started sleeping better. I was still a product manager, but I wasn't trying to be the product manager anymore. The flawless strategist, the corporate diplomat, the master of all. I was just trying to be human. Eventually, I left that role. Not in a blaze of glory. Just a quiet mutual understanding that I had done what I could, and it was time to move on. My next job wasn't a dramatic upgrade. In fact, the title was the same. But I came in with clearer eyes. I asked better questions in interviews. I scoped smaller features. I spent less time building roadmaps no one would follow and more time building relationships that mattered. I stopped pretending I had all the answers. I made room for ambiguity. I made room for people to surprise me. I made room for myself. And slowly the job got, not easier, but lighter. I still get blindsided by executives. I still deal with engineers who ghost my Slack messages. I still have to explain, again and again, that no, we cannot build that in 2 sprints. But now I don't take it personally. I know where I end and others begin. I know that being a product manager isn't about owning everything. It's about navigating uncertainty with as much honesty and humility as you can. And yeah, it still sucks sometimes, but I've stopped pretending it doesn't. That's the real win.